We hope you enjoy this episode of the Modern Arizona podcast. But first, an important message for our listeners.
Hello and welcome to the Modern Arizona podcast. You may have noticed we recently changed our name from the Modern Divorce Podcast to the Modern Arizona Podcast. Recently, our topics have gotten broader than simply divorce and family law related into topics that all Arizona families, professionals, and individuals might care about. So in keeping with our expanded scope and what you, our listeners, want to listen to, we are now the Modern Arizona Podcast. Hello, this is Billy Tarasio, owner of Modern Law. We are a family law firm in Phoenix, Arizona with offices throughout the state. We've got attorneys who can help you with every aspect of your family law case. We have a legal clinic run by students for those of you who need budget-friendly resources. And we've got lawyers who've been practicing for more than 20 years. Collectively, Modern Law has more than 200 years of attorney experience. So when you hire Modern Law, you're not just getting an attorney, you are getting a team. If you live in Arizona and you need representation, call us at Modern Law today. That's 480-649-2905, 480-649-2905, or visit us at mymodernlaw.com. Hello and welcome to the Modern Arizona Podcast. I'm your host, Arizona family law attorney Billy Tarasio. Today I am joined by fellow attorney David Pisarra from California, who runs and owns Dad's Law School. David, welcome to the show.
Hi, Billy. Thank you. I'm so glad to be here.
Yeah, thank you for being here. So you are an attorney in California, correct?
I am. We've been practicing in California for about 25 years now. It's gone fast. It's amazing.
And where in California are you?
I'm actually in Los Angeles. I'm down on the coast by a little city called Santa Monica.
Wonderful.
But I practice all over the state. I've been as far north as Redding and as far south as San Diego and as far east as San Bernardino. So whatever's going on in the state, I've got my fingers in it.
Got it. Okay. And you also run, in addition to your law firm, you
Uh-huh.
run Dad's Law School. Is that a separate company?
It's a separate company, and what we're doing is, so let me back up a second. My practice is primarily fathers. It's Men's Family Law is the main website for our law firm. And that's because we focus on dads and fathers. Because what I found over 25 years is they're a very underserved population. They're very uneducated. They come into court, they don't know what they need. And so I'm coming in and trying to help them. And I can do great one-on-one. But what I found is that there's a lot of need and I need to do more at scale. And so that's why I created Dad's Law School, which is an online course that teaches dads how to represent themselves in family court. Because as I'm sure you know, when we sit in court, you see those pro pers and they get up there and they're fumbling with the documents and they're trying to make an argument and they don't know what to say. And then they're getting frustrated and they're angry and they're hurt. It's just making the whole situation worse. So I thought, well, there's this thing called Kajabi, and it's an online platform that teaches people how to really, it's an online platform that allows me to teach people at scale how to represent themselves. So what I did was I created Dad's Law School, and it's a 3-course program. It's designed to teach dads the very basics of family court. It's like, here's what's your declaration. Here's what goes in your declaration. Here's how you use evidence. Here's how you gather evidence. And here's how you make objections to evidence. And so it's a very short course designed to make it just so that a dad can go into court and make his case a little bit better than if he doesn't do anything.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. The self-representing market is one that I have been trying to serve in various ways for 20 years. It's a hard market to serve. I
Fair.
own Win Without Law School in addition to my law firm, which is a similar concept of it's a platform and a program, and we have live office hours and we've got a support group online, and it's a similar concept. And it feels like just what you said, the one-to-one attorney model is so expensive and so inefficient. It seems
Hugely.
like it's much easier to reach people, but I have found in my various iterations of trying to serve this market that it's very difficult to get people to actually sign up. Have you found that?
Definitely.
Okay.
Definitely had that struggle. And my business coach, I've been with him for years on various projects, and his motto is launch and adjust. I threw it out there, and I'm just adjusting and trying to like massage it down to get to the message that's actually going to fit.
Mhm.
And I may have cracked it. I may have found something that's going to be a little bit more emotional pull. What I found is that I, like most lawyers, I'm very heady. I'm
Mhm.
very academic. Like I
Mhm.
can get in there and I can tell you how to write a declaration and how to do your objections, and I get all into the academics of it. And that's great when I'm teaching. It's horrible when I'm selling. It's
Mhm.
horrible when I'm trying to communicate and connect with people.
Mhm.
Because a dad, and I'm assuming a mom, who's in crisis, who's scared they're never going to see their kids again. They're being financially abused by the system. They've probably got to set up a new apartment, or they're trying to live with half their income, whatever the situation is. They got all these emotions, and here I am trying to come in academics. Well, first you do with this with the exhibit, and you mark and you identify, and it's like they don't get it because it's not what they need. What they need is, do you know what to tell the judge to get your kids? I can give you that. Go check out my courses. Here's a sample of what my courses are like. Here's how I teach. And so I'm trying that. We're going to see, because the need is tremendous.
Mhm.
I was at a dinner a couple of weeks ago, and I was talking to our current judges in family law. And I said, listen, here's what I'm thinking. I'm trying to do this thing online. I'm going to do a boot camp. I want to get like 10 guys in a room, like walk through my course and see if I can get them to be better litigants. What's the one thing you want them to know?
Mhm.
And both judges said the same thing.
Mhm.
A, great idea. Dads need help. B, would you tell them they have to give us more information? We're not getting enough information. And I don't know about in Arizona, but here, generally, dads walk into court and they know I'm entitled to my 50% custody. So they're walking into court and they're like, I'm a great dad. I want my 50% custody. And then they shut up and they don't say anything else because they don't know what else to tell the judge. And so mom comes in and is like, I know this about the kids. I know that about the kids. I know the doctors, the school schedules. I know their best friends. I know all this information. He's not doing a great job as a dad. He shouldn't get a lot of time. And the dad's like, what's going on? And the judge is trying to figure out what's in the kid's best interest. Well, I got one parent who knows a lot about the kid, and I got one parent who says he's a great dad, which I've heard from every father that ever walked into family court. No father has ever walked into family court and said, I'm a horrible father. Give me 50% custody, right? I mean, that doesn't
Right.
happen.
Right.
So if we can give them the information to know what to ask of themselves, to then tell that to the judge, they're going to do a much better job. And at the end of the day, what it really is, from my perspective, a more engaged father is better for the kids.
Absolutely.
And I don't think that they're not engaged because they don't want to be. I think that they're not because they don't know what to tell them, because men don't share this information. We don't talk about it very much. So if I can get them to like start opening up and sharing with the judge what they do actually know, I think
Mhm.
they'll do better in the long run.
Mhm. Okay. So I wanted to ask you because I don't see necessarily that fathers are treated worse in Arizona courts. There's such a strong presumption for 50-50. Um, but you are seeing men. What I see is them walk into court less prepared because they never wanted the divorce and they weren't planning to file for the last 3 years. And so they've been
Right.
completely caught off guard by this very prepared
100%.
spouse who knew it was coming.
Yes. And has probably honestly met with 2 to 3 lawyers, has done all the strategizing, has talked to 4 or 5 other women who have gone through the same
Oh,
thing,
yeah.
figured out like, what do you do? How do I do this? How do I make sure I get that? They've got all their ducks in a row.
Right. So
And
is that the
one of the
same thing you're seeing? Is that the big disadvantage? Is they're walking in unprepared, or are there other systematic things set up against fathers?
Yeah, I think it's very much they're coming in unprepared. They, and I get a little bit racy, like in my TikToks. I'm a little bit out there. You may have noticed. I'm not your typical lawyer. One of the things I tell dads is, and they never see this coming, is oftentimes they think like they're having sex once every 3 months. and they think everything is okay.
Mm.
And they don't realize that that's all a diversion. It's all to keep them thinking everything is okay.
Mm.
While she's meeting with lawyers, while she's putting down her credit card debts, keeping his high, while she's doing her planning. So when the time comes, 100%, she's well prepared and he's blindsided. And that's not even dealing with the whole domestic violence restraining order stuff, which that's a whole other level of blindside.
I talked to another California lawyer recently about this, and it seems like the system in California for restraining orders is really severe and really set up to have a huge negative across the board impact without room for a lot of discretion or nuance.
That's 100% true. It is my experience that when Nicole Brown Simpson was murdered, there was a sea change in domestic violence philosophy. And we've gone from that horrible state of, basically just shy of murders, what it's going to take,
Right.
to the opposite extreme of, well, they yelled at me, so I'm scared, so they shouldn't be allowed near their children.
Right.
And it's literally that extreme these days. Because if a person goes into court and says, they yelled at me, I'm scared they're going to get violent, I'm scared they're going to hurt the children were in the house, not in the room, but in the house. Now, that perpetrator is no longer presumed to be a good parent, and it's actually in the children's best interest to not have custody with that parent.
Yeah.
So imagine what that does, because now you've got somebody who's going to win sole legal, sole physical custody, maximize their child support, maximize their spousal support. And from a leverage perspective, they have absolute leverage in the divorce, because most men who are generally the alleged perpetrators will give whatever you want, just whatever you want. I don't care. Let me see my kids.
Yeah. And
so what's happening is in the family bars, what's happening is domestic violence restraining orders are almost automatically pursued with the divorce filing. Almost automatic.
This is so bad, because what happens is in Arizona, we have not done that, but there's such a fear that the restraining orders are being improperly used, and there are people who do improperly use it, and it's making it really difficult for those who need it to get it.
Yes.
It's just all around bad.
Horrible. And I don't want to get too far into this, but I don't know if you've been following the local Bachelor, Clayton Eckert, Laura Owens thing that's going on in Arizona, where she basically has misapplied the domestic violence restraining orders against 3 men, and all 3 men were told the same story. Date me. Oh, I'm magically pregnant with twins. The twins don't happen. They stop wanting to date her. Now they're abusers. And we see that happen a lot, because these things are in California, they're granted on such, in my mind, flimsy information.
Yeah.
What couple doesn't argue at some point? Who doesn't at some point raise their voice?
Yeah, there's a big difference. To get a restraining order here, you have to prove an act of domestic violence has occurred within a certain period of time. And an act of domestic violence can mean many, many, many things. It can mean things that are inconsequential because you all are breaking up and things are bad and you're fighting and you're breaking up. Or it can mean, systematic patterns of terror within a home. And judges have a really hard time figuring out which and when and how and what to do with the information.
Absolutely. This is an incredibly gray area, because I grew up in a very loud Italian German family. Like, there was lots of yelling. There was also lots of actual domestic violence in my household. But this was back in the old days when it was physical violence. And even then, courts were very hesitant to issue a restraining order. But normative in my family, if you yell at somebody, that doesn't mean that you're abusing them. That doesn't mean that you hate them. That doesn't mean that you're going to kill them.
Yeah,
But
there
in
are.
today's environment in California, that's grounds,
Absolutely, right? Absolutely.
100%. We have a standard of, are you disturbing the peaceful enjoyment of the other party's mental state?
Really?
Yes, disturbing the peace. Now, I don't know
What?
any two people who have ever been roommates where one of them hasn't at some point annoyed the other one. Like,
Disturbing the peace? Isn't that just what it
yes,
means to be a family? Like my kids
yes,
sitting there playing video games and I'm like, it's time to go do blah blah blah. I've disturbed their peace.
yes.
Like, okay, so that's not a reasonable standard at all.
I totally agree with you, but in California, we've got judges who are enforcing it.
And the problem in California further is if you can get yourself a restraining order, you're going to be blocked from seeing your children for 3 years. Is that the minimum time frame?
No, no, it's generally it's about 6 months to 5 years for the first one, and then it's subject to renewal. And renewal takes a two-page filing that says, "I'm still afraid."
Wow. So
Not that they violated again, not that anything else has happened. I'm still afraid. And I'm like, come on. And it's not just that like the damage we're doing to the kids and the family and all of that. But we're actually dealing with constitutional issues here.
right.
Like the Supreme Court just ruled that it's reasonable to suspend someone's Second Amendment rights if they're considered to be an abuser
Mhm.
in family court.
Which
Well, now we're
makes
taking
sense
someone's
when you're dealing with violent, dangerous individuals, and
sure,
doesn't make sense when we're dealing with couples who are arguing.
100%. And I think that's one of the problems with family law, and particularly domestic violence, is we're not approaching it from a tiered level. There are no levels to domestic violence,
You're
which
right.
realistically there should be.
You're
Because there
absolutely
is
right.
that first level of, okay, we're breaking up. We're going to squabble over stupid little things like we do in family court. But 3 months from now, nobody's going to have any real contact with each other. We should be done. Versus, okay, there's been lots of financial abuse going on, lots of alienation, lots of isolation, sort of like a level 2. This deserves a greater level of restriction. And then there's actual like, physical violence where there's actual harassing, stalking, things that are really affecting people. This should be like a level 3. That would make sense to me. Here's the problem. Nobody has a dog in making that happen.
Mm.
Nobody's gonna lobby the California legislature to change our laws in such a way that we set in place these levels. Because the domestic violence shelters don't want it. They actually want the opposite. They want like bring it on, like DV for everybody. You get a DV and you get a DV and you get a DV.
Really?
Why?
Because isn't that just an abuse of resources? Do they really want that?
Yes, because it translates into money,
Ah,
translates into grants. How many people are you serving? How many people did you house? How many people did you get work? Oh, you need more people getting work retraining. Let's give you more money to do that. Oh, you need new programs. Let's give you more money
it
because
is a
that's what
yes or no, and it shouldn't be a yes or no. It really shouldn't be a yes or no. Domestic violence, yes or
it's.
no. It's too complex. Humans are complex. And one of the things family law attorneys know better than anybody is just how messy life can be and how nuanced life can be.
Absolutely. And one of the things I don't know about Arizona, but in California, our judges, psychological training, zero. They get no psychology training, which great. You're a bankruptcy lawyer, you don't really need it. You're a
Right.
tax judge, you don't really need it. You're civil, you don't really need it. Family law, you and I have been practicing long enough. We're borderline psychologists at this point.
Yeah, so much of what we do is psychological and understanding relationship patterns and nuance. But okay, so you are the second California lawyer I've spoken to recently, and we were talking about family law, and we really got caught up on the restraining order situation. So the restraining order situation in California is having an enormous impact on family law.
Tremendous.
And what
It's
are you,
overtaking it.
and how, oh, it sounds like it.
Yeah.
So how are you teaching dads to deal with this?
So the first thing is I'm teaching them how to go into court and plead their case. So when we file a request for orders or a response to a request for orders, we have to file a declaration. And that declaration has to be a statement of facts and what do you know about your kid? Why should you have the relationship with your child? Why should you have the parenting plan that you're asking? And so what I'm trying to do is teach these dads, listen, you got to put more into it. Judge has to know that you understand who the kids' friends are. You know their schooling, you know their teachers, their doctors. You've got to go in and explain to them how close you are to your child and how involved you are. And a lot of that helps when we're trying to overcome those presumptions that you're an aggressive person, that you don't know what you're doing as a parent, that you're negligent, that you're just sort of asleep at the wheel because mom's saying that. So if I can go in and show to the judge, listen, here's everything dad knows about the child, judge, it's going to have two impacts. One, dad's going to suddenly become a little bit more liked, a little bit more trusted by the judge. And two, mom's credibility might be impacted a little bit. If mom's saying dad's negligent, but he's got all this evidence, all this proof, he's got his calendar with all of his receipts stapled to it, he's showing me that, listen, he's using his visiting time. He's taking the kids to sports. He's doing the tutoring. Mom, you say he doesn't do any of that, but dad gave me all this evidence. Maybe you have an ulterior motive here, mom. So now the judge is in a better position to make a more equitable decision. But that's only when dad goes into court and shows who he really is. And that's what we're teaching through my child custody action plan. It's the first course in the program that dads take, sort of an overview course of here's what you got to show the judge. Here's how you talk to the judge. I mean, I literally teach public speaking to these guys. Now, not to like a Toastmasters, you're going to be Les Brown level, but here's when you're speaking, like you don't have to freak out. It's going to be okay. Remember to breathe. Remember time gets condensed. 2-second pauses seem like 3 minutes. It's okay. You're going to be fine. Judge is going to give you time. So I'm giving them the tools and the skills they need to make a better case of themselves in front of the judge.
This is Billy Tarasio, owner of Win Without Law School and Modern Law. Win Without Law School is a program that operates nationally and helps people who are representing themselves or who just need more help. If you are in a family court case and you're feeling confused, you need direction, you need help figuring out questions to procedural or strategic issues, Win Without Law School can help. At Win Without Law School, you've got two experienced attorneys, me and my partner, Julie LeBenz, who can guide you through the court process and help you troubleshoot your case. You've got access to courses, planners, checklists, and live Q&A. Our live Q&A is where you can get help from us and your community. We also have a closed Facebook group just for members where you all can share your experience, share your pleadings, get advice, and mentorship. Join us today at winwithoutlawschool.com. That's winwithoutlawschool.com. Okay, so in our situation, dad has a restraining order against him, but he is able to go in and articulate who his children are and his relationship to them and everything he knows. What will the judge do in that circumstance about the restraining order?
They'll probably keep the restraining order in place, but this may be enough to prevent dad from having to have supervised visits. And if dad's got to have supervised visits, that's $150 easy each weekend on top of his child support, on top of the anger management courses, on top of the batters intervention courses, on top of the co-parenting courses, on top of the parenting courses that he's got to pay. So if I can save him even just that $150, which twice a month, that's $300. That right there now is $300 that he can use for his children, for his life.
So you can overcome the presumption that comes with having a restraining order against you.
We can moderate it because there is a provision where dads can show that they've done their courses, that they've changed, that they're not actually a threat to the child. And if we can do that, the father's going to be in a much better position to then like start having regular visitations and then make the claim like, okay, it's been a year, Your Honor. There've been no violations. Dad's doing a good job. The child's bonded. Let's start expanding his time.
Wow. So it really feels like in order for dads to really be on an even playing field, back to what you said, you have to learn to recognize when your marriage is in trouble.
100%. I would just expand that as it's not just marriages, it's mostly relationships these days. Marriage is a descending institution. We're seeing fewer and fewer married couples these days, which is leading to fewer and fewer divorces, but we're still seeing a very high birth rate. So
Mm,
couples are still having children. That
mhm,
means that they have to figure out when that relationship is going to be in trouble and how
mhm,
quickly that's going to deteriorate and what you can do to maintain it so that you don't end up in family court with the restraining order against you.
mhm. What a mess.
Oh, it's when I zoom back and I look at it from like a societal perspective, we got a lot of problems. We got a lot of problems, and they're just getting worse. The fact that people are so fluid in their relationships, they're not making commitments, they're not willing to stick through the hard times, they're not willing to make from my perspective, the growth that they need to maintain their relationships, because that's what is teaching the children how to interact with each other. And those children are going to be our next generation of parents. So I don't know what that's going to lead to.
This is not an uplifting podcast.
Unfortunately, I got to look at it like what's going on, what's the real lay of the land, and then what can I do to fix that? So what I can do to fix that is I can teach dads how to be better dads. I can teach them how to argue to the judge so they have more time for their kids so they can be there for them when they're needed.
So, what is happening in Arizona is definitely different. Dads are probably more engaged than they ever have been because the presumption for equal parenting time is probably higher
Mhm.
culturally than it ever has been here in Arizona. And I think generally speaking, millennial dads really stepped up from the Gen X dad standpoint. So, did that shift happen and then you got to this new wave that you're at now?
No, I think what's happened is the domestic violence stuff has sort of overtaken everything. You've got more dads, more of those millennials are wanting more time, but now they're fighting against the DV issues
Wow.
because the DV issues are money. It's a money thing.
Wow.
Yeah,
Big deal. Big deal. So, if you're in California, dads, you have to understand the implications, and moms too. We've got members in Win Without Law School who are moms who have had restraining orders placed on them and they don't get to see their children. And
right.
then there's a court order where they're supposed to see their children, but dad's just withholding. And mom
Sure.
can't really do much about it because she can't even reach out. She's not
Right.
even allowed to text her children. It's
Yeah.
rough.
It's horrible. I don't think I think it's such a disservice to the kids. I
Yeah.
think it's such a disservice to our society because what we're creating is this very much everybody's at loggerheads mentality.
Yeah. So when did this shift happen in California? Is it new legislation that occurred?
So it's been a slow, well, semi-slow growth. 30 years ago, Nicole Brown Simpson was murdered, and not getting into who did what to whom, just the fact that she was murdered, that was a real turning point for us. And it's just gotten more and more and more over the years as DV has become more of an issue. Uh, and one of the things that I notice is that it's very hard for me to get a man to pursue a restraining order against a woman.
Mm,
They are really hesitant to do it,
hmm.
and it's a very difficult situation because I look at them and I say, dude, you have got everything you need to do this. Even with the presumptions and the biases against us as men, you still got a really great shot. You should do it. And they always come back with the same statement. I can't do it. She's my kid's mom. And I'm
So,
like, that's great. In 3 weeks, you're going to be sitting in that chair and you're going to get hit with one. And I don't want you crying to me that this is not fair and that I need to fix it because I'm telling you, we're not going to be fixing it.
ugh.
Yeah.
So then what happens is with couples who are fighting, there actually is a incentive to go get the restraining order, because if you don't, they will.
Correct.
All bad. This is all bad,
Correct.
all bad, all bad for families
100%.
trying to figure out how to co-parent children who are having to deal with the restructuring of their family. Not good at all.
It's a very difficult situation. And let's bring this back though into reality. Of all of the breakups, of all of the divorces, probably 70% never see this type of behavior.
Good.
70% are probably like, okay, we're splitting up. Maybe there's a custody filing to get court orders and get a child support order in place. And for whatever reason, the couples come to an agreement, whether one just gave in too much before they should have, whatever, they come to an agreement. And they're essentially co-parenting civilly, if not peacefully. So
Excellent.
that's probably 70%. 30% are really these high conflict cases that we're talking about. And then of those, really 10% are the real nightmare ones, where people are spending stupid amounts of money arguing over stupid things for years on end.
Okay,
So
good. So it's
while
not as bad
we're
as we
talking
made it.
about the bad stuff, it's really not as bad for everybody.
Okay, so your practice is mostly dads, and would you say most of them are lower conflict?
Most of ours, we're going through a round or two of hearings to come to an agreement,
Mhm.
and then I don't see them again for 5 or 10 years.
Nice.
And maybe they're coming back because, okay, Bobby or Susie is now at that mid-teenage years and they want to go live with the other parent just because, and we need to modify and update and redo child support. And it's, again, one hearing, maybe two, but it's not a war.
How long does it usually take clients in California or people in California to get through the system from point A to point B, from an initial filing to being done?
Usually it's between 6 months and a year
Got it.
for a child custody case.
All
And
right.
divorces can take much longer because we've got all the financial issues and disclosures.
How long are divorces taking?
1 to 15 years.
Really?
We have one that's actually taken that long where they're fighting. And they're just, I mean, that's an outlier. The majority of them are like under 2 years, and then there's like 2 to 5 years where we're fighting over just because of COVID and stuff. Where we're doing some discovery. We've got forensic accountants, and we're fighting over money, and they're just fighting because they want to fight, truthfully. Like there's no real reason for them to be fighting. I've got one we're wrapping up. I was in trial for 14 months. No kids involved. It was literally just stock options and 2 pieces of property. And I'm sitting there going, why are we doing this?
Why did that take 14 months?
Well, we started November of 2022. We had our first trial date, which was an afternoon. And then we had one in December, and then we had one in February, and then we had one in June. And we weren't getting all of our trial back to back. We were being fit in to the court's calendar. And so 9 days of trial over 14 months.
Got it. Wow. You get a lot of trial time. We do not. We're like, the judge is like, you have 3 hours, present your case, done.
Oh, that thing I was just talking about, the Clayton Eckerd, Laura Owens thing, they just had a huge hearing. Very, very important hearing. It was 2 hours.
Yeah.
And the judge was tracking it to the second, how much time. I was like, you've got it. What is this? Like,
I know,
oh,
right?
wow.
Right. You have to wonder if it's a violation of due process, but at the same time, nobody is waiting 3 to 5 years to get divorced.
There should be a middle ground though.
Right? We got pros and cons. All right.
It did seem to me like a bit of a it really did seem to me like a due process violation because neither side had an opportunity to really present their case.
Right. It's not an easy condition to lawyer under. But what it does encourage is you have to know what's important to the judge and give them that information and that information only. And if you choose wrong, on what you think is important versus what they think is important, it can have dire consequences. So,
and that's a really good point because that's one of the things I teach in the child custody action plan is the judge wants to know there's a beach. They don't want to know every grain of sand. Like just tell them there's a beach, and if there's a couple important rocks, highlight those. Because so often, people come into family court and they want to tell the entire story of their relationship. No one cares.
Yeah.
Judge doesn't care. Judge wants to know three things. Like, how long were you together? How many kids do you got? What do you got now in terms of custody and visitation? Let's start there.
Right. Yeah. All right. So how do people find more about Dad's Law School?
So there's two main ways. The main one is the website is dadslawschool.com. And on there, the first page, we've got our free playbook for dads on what to expect in family court. There's a note that we've got our badass boot camp. It's a live boot camp. It's a 1 day to teach dads all the information that they're going to need. And they can sign up for my monthly subscription model where they can have twice a month meetups with me. They get email support. They can send me emails and we'll go back and forth. We, of course, have a community where they can start raising their own questions and talking to each other. And then the other is my podcast is just launching. It's Dad's Law School podcast.
Awesome.
So we're going to be taking with case studies and answering questions.
It's a great idea. David, thank you so much for your time today. Thank you for coming on the show and for being a real advocate for families and for dads. I truly appreciate it.
Thank you, Billy. It's been great seeing you and great knowing you finally now after 2 years of watching you on TikTok.
Have a great day.
You too.
Thanks so much for listening to the Modern Divorce Podcast. Remember, anything you've heard today or anything you read online is not the replacement for actual consultation with an attorney and does not create an attorney-client relationship. Even if you called in and we spoke to you, you are anonymous and we don't have your details and you have not become a client of Modern Law. However, we would love to speak with you, or you should seek out the advice of legal counsel or counseling or any other expert near you. And if you have an idea for a show topic or you need to speak with an attorney in Arizona, you can reach me at info@mymodernlaw.com.